So there and there.
That's all we got, yeah.
You have no range.
No, it's just focused on the top.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool in a way, like if you just want that end contraction, which you don't get on anything else, it's kind of cool. Oh. Hip thrusts, glute bridges, whatever you want to call them, they've become quite a popular exercise over the last, say, 10 or 20 years. Almost to the point where they're a little bit overhyped, I would say. But they certainly can be a viable option when doing a session with clients. So I wanted to talk through some of the things you might want to think about if you're going to select a glute bridge as an exercise, and also just do a little bit of analysis into the exercise and talk through maybe some of the pros and cons. So here's Marty Fortune and I doing some hip thrusts down at Camperdown Fitness in Sydney, Australia. We're actually using the Panata hip thrust machine. So it is kind of specific to this machine, but a lot of those hip thrust machines are built in a kind of similar manner to this one. So it may apply to the hip thrust machine that you do have in your facility. For me personally, I kind of enjoy this exercise. I actually like the ability to really focus in and challenge that short position. It's one of those exercises where you can really kind of narrow in and target the muscle in that more shortened position, which there's not a whole lot of options for in most gyms here in Sydney, Australia. So that's one aspect I really like about the piece. Now you can see when Marty's on this machine, he doesn't really have the ability to get very low down. His only option really is to challenge that top part of the range, just because of the mass of his hip area. It kind of forces him to really just have to do that top section of the range in the exercise. If you've ever done this exercise, you may have noticed that as you do increase the load on it, the temptation to kind of shove your foot forward on that platform actually increases. And the more we tend to shove forward on that platform, the more quadriceps we bring into the exercise, which could then be taking away from the goal of challenging glutes in the exercise. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. Maybe next time you choose this exercise, have a think about your foot and what it's actually doing on that pad. Is it shoving forward really hard, or is it shoving straight down? The more forward shove you get, the more likelihood you're bringing a lot more quadricep into that exercise. Now, the padding for the bar that goes over your pelvis on this piece is actually quite thin, and that can actually be problematic for some people. They might get a bit of discomfort around the front side of their pelvis when they're doing the exercise. And it may even be at a point where it's not viable for some clients because that is just digging in so hard that it's just too uncomfortable for them to do the exercise in itself. For other clients, however, might not be an issue for them. They might have no discomfort whatsoever with that, and that's totally fine. Just bearing in mind, though, we might be doing damage without realizing if we do have a bar digging into that front side of the pelvis regularly when doing this exercise. One thing you might want to consider with these machines, just in general, and just hip thrusts in general, even if you're using a bar, is the resistance actually does not drop off as you go through this exercise. So from start to finish, the resistance is kind of the same. It's not changing a whole lot, but our ability to produce output or force in our glutes is actually decreasing as we get to the top of the range. So load isn't really changing, but our ability to produce force is actually decreasing. And this is why with this exercise, you see people swing it really hard. They tend to swing it wildly up and down. They tend to shove their feet forward in the floor because that resistance is not necessarily getting any easier as you get to the top, and our ability to produce force is going down. Overall, this glute bridge hip thrust exercise can be a viable option in many scenarios. However, bear in mind there might be some clients that it's just not a viable option for, and that's fine. Obviously, it would be nice if we can get a scenario where we have that resistance actually dropping off as we get to that short position, because that would better match what our muscles are capable of producing in terms of output. However, maybe we just want to work that really small top part of the range. We might have a reason for that, and this can certainly be a really good option for that. Let me know what you think of the video in the comments. Curious to know what options you use for challenging glutes in that short position. Are there other hip thrust machines you've come across that have been really nice to use? Let me know in the comments. And if you have any questions, ask them there, and I'll get back to you really soon.